any public platform.
If no one objects, maybe we could share it just as a information sharing exercise. So
Yeah. So once we download it,
because other
I
members
will
of the
send the
group,
link and then you
other,
can, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
use it.
yeah.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. Warm welcome to all of you to this webinar on implementation challenges to RTI in Goa, a brainstorming session. I must say that Goa has actually received short shrift in all the so-called official histories of the RTI movement in India, because while people's movements demanding right to information laws in other states have received a lion's share of the attention, but the story of how the movement for transparency in Goa unfolded and how it resulted in the first of the two laws passed in any state in India in 1997, that has actually not been adequately documented. So we know that Goa is a pioneer state. Your provisions in the RTI law influence the drafting process of the Central RTI Act as well. Of course, there were other states' RTI laws which also formed the basis for drafting the central law. We know that there is a very vibrant civil society sector in Goa working on a variety of issues, not just transparency, but also accountability, exploitation of labor, exploitation of children, environmental issues in a big way. And I'm sure there are many other issues as well, which I am not very familiar with. But transparency is something that cuts across or traverses all these sectors of citizen activism. And the right to information law provides a tool for everybody who would like to see change happening in our administration, in our public affairs. The first step towards bringing about change is to instill greater transparency in the decision-making process and actions of public authorities. And that is what RTI is meant to do. I'm sure there is a very rich experience of use of RTI in Goa, not just under the State Act, but also under the Central Act. There are several stalwarts also who have been associated with the RTI movement. I would like to welcome you all. I hope and wish that this is the first of several brainstorming sessions that we will embark upon to discuss how to improve implementation of the RTI Act in Goa. My own organization, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, may not be familiar with to everybody, but we've been in India since 1993. We've been working on right to information, amongst other issues, including access to justice since 1997. We were part of the process of drafting the RTI bill at the central level within civil society, and later on we gave several inputs to the government of India before it tabled a very weak version of the RTI bill in Parliament in December 2004. And after that, we were invited on a couple of occasions by the Department-related Standing Committee on Law, Personnel, and Justice to present on best practices on right to information laws in other countries. And we were able to share a lot of good practice standards from other countries. And it was quite encouraging and quite satisfying, quite gratifying to see that many of the recommendations that civil society made, including our own, found their way into the final version of the RTI bill that was adopted by Parliament. Ever since its adoption and enactment, CHRI has been engaged in conducting a series of training programs and a series of workshops for civil society and government. We have conducted countless workshops so far. We've brought out user guides in multiplicity of languages on the right to information. I would like to invite you all to visit our website, which is www.humanrightsinitiative.org. I will put it on the chat box a little later. It has a lot of rich material with regard to RTI implementation in India. We also file right to information requests, particularly with central government, to make its decision-making processes more transparent, thereby demanding greater accountability of people in power in the central government. We've also filed RTIs on a variety of issues relating to people's access to justice, police reforms, prison reforms, and human rights issues across several states in India. Many of our publications on issues of police accountability and accountability of the prison administration are based on data that has been obtained through the RTI Act. I welcome you all to look at our publications on the right to information. Thank you, Fred, for putting putting up our website's address on the chat box. I will stop here now, and I will hand over the floor to Fred to moderate this discussion. Like we mentioned in the discussion on the RTI WhatsApp group, there is no set agenda. This is a brainstorming session. Everybody is free to raise their issues, their experience, voice their experience, ask questions, seek clarifications for doubts, make suggestions, but everything has to be connected with right to information and ancillary issues with regard to transparency. I would request everybody to maintain a decorum here. Please try and avoid raising contentious issues on other themes, because that will only spoil the flavor of the discussion here. Our main purpose is to look at how do we strengthen the implementation of right to information in Goa. There could be issues related to implementation in other parts of the country as well. That's also fine to raise. But what was being said in the RTI WhatsApp group was to see how we can actually turn some of these issues that are plaguing the successful implementation, the effective implementation of RTI in Goa into election issues, so that politicians who come out to seek votes in a couple of months from now will actually take these issues into consideration and make some promises, at least in their manifestos or in their public expressions of their intent of what they would like to do if they were to come to power. So this platform is meant to provide a space for everybody to discuss freely and frankly all these issues with regard to the use and implementation of the RTI Act. I will stop here and hand over the floor to Frederick. Over to you, Frederick.
Less of handing over the floor and more of acting as umpire. Since there are so many people here and some have very well versed in the RTI, names I recognize and names I don't recognize, maybe Avinash Tavares and a lot of others. If it's okay by all of you all, can we take 1 or 2 minutes each just to have a round of introduction? We go by making a round of introductions and saying which aspect of the act we are looking at, where we are having problems, where we need help, any suggestions, maybe in 1 or 2 minutes. Then we'll keep it as an open floor for anyone to have more detailed interventions, but to give everyone a chance, unless you don't want to speak, which is also okay. But Avinash, since I recognize your name and I know you've done so much work, can I request you to start, please?
Hi everyone. Glad to be joining all of y'all, and thanks for holding such a thing. It's much needed. I'm right now working with a couple of parties on the manifesto. One of it officially, but we are trying. I try to push as much as such agendas as possible. But the thing is, we do need support from civil society, because not enough people are talking about RTI during this election chaos, and the issues go on different directions. So yes, hopefully some that at least can come out of this, considering this is an election season. And the only thing I would like to say, one of the major things missing in Goa is an online RTI application system. So that would solve a lot of problems logistically, considering this COVID and all. So with that, I hand over the thing to the next speaker. Thanks so much for listening to me.
I'm a great fan of Avinash, because his bias and my bias tallies. He's done it much more effectively, using information as a tool for activism in that sense. And I'm grateful that he has done it. He put it very succinctly. Anyone else who's willing to go next? I'll go. I'll also, it's my duty also to introduce myself. Sorry, some glitch with my camera, because I've got about 100 tabs open and I don't know which tab is hogging my camera. So Zoom is not opening my camera here. My name is Frederick. I've been a journalist for donkey's years. Too long for my own good. And I've been fascinated with the RTI Act for a long time, since 1997, when the Goa Act came about. I feel very strongly that journalists have not used it enough, and while we are defensive and critical about the act, we've not even tried it in many cases. And sometimes I've got good responses through the act. I've got tons of information. Sometimes I've not got information. Most of the time I've also been lazy in not following up. I've never been to a single appeal, so that is clearly my failing. As Avinash says, the information that comes out to me stays with me, so that's not good enough. We need some way of sharing it, so that the wider community is aware. Okay. we need to team up with others. So I was struggling to get information about the collapsing Sea Harriers, because out of 31 bought at about 80 crores each in those days, 16 collapsed, crashed without a single, without taking part in a single operation, and that was the area of concern. So I met this RTI activist from Kerala who pushed and got it, and together we did that story. But the other thing is that even these small things like post office efficiency, they've been shaving off 1 hour of their operations every day by closing 1 hour early. There's some agreement going on between the unions and the management, and they keep it kind of between themselves, and they're quite happy with that arrangement. So that was changed for a little while, and now they've gone back to it. So two issues: consistency among ourselves and sharing of information. Who'll take it next? You're most welcome. Need a volunteer.
Hi, I can volunteer. This is Karan here. Sorry, I just joined a bit late.
Please.
Just to say hello. I really don't have any agenda. I just thought I'd listen in to see what people have to say. I think I have made my main observations known on that WhatsApp group. Basically, I would say that from my experience with RTI, which has not been huge, it must be said, I think I've done 3 RTIs. My main observations are that obviously the way that you frame your questions is very key. We all know that, but also I think equally key is probably who you get as the PIO and who who he reports to, and how sensitive does the information that you are asking for seem. So in some ways, it's kind of a good idea in my experience to try and disguise, if that information is going to possibly get the very people in that department into some kind of trouble, possibly, is to kind of disguise the questions in a way that isn't apparent. Otherwise, the chances of you're not getting that information increases. That's my little experience that I've had. And then, once you get into that whole appealing process and so on, I think I mentioned this on the group as well. I think, that whole business of first appeals is really, in all the, well, certainly 2 of the 3 that I did, turned out to be a complete waste of time, because they belong to the same department. They try to protect their own. It reflects badly on them that the PIO has not given, the information that he should have given. So they too try to find some technical way of kind of avoiding giving you the full information. And even in the cases where they do order that the information be given to you, when the PIO doesn't give it, because there's kind of almost no real penalty on them, then you're forced to waste even more time by going to the second appeal. And I haven't actually taken it that far, so I don't really know about what the experiences would be there. But if the whole first appeal could be done away with, because in my experience it's just a bit of a waste of time when they belong to the same department, that would probably be a good thing. I do think that the online application process would be very good, because it would make things much easier. You don't have to go traipsing around the place. There's also a physical, a digital record of it. I guess it becomes more difficult for them to kind of just avoid your coming back to you. I mean, there is one RTI that I have applied for. I have not got the answers. I've got a first appeal verdict in my favor. And months have passed and I still haven't got the answer, because this PIO really knows that there's no real penalty that he's going to have to pay. What else? Yeah, I think sharing would be great, because I think we all probably pick up some information that is very worthwhile for the general public to know. Some of it might be very specialized, but some of it is probably very useful for a lot of people. So if there could be a repository somewhere, and it could be easy to access in some way without you having to kind of trawl through a very complicated spreadsheet or very technical difficulties, that would be really handy. And I think we all know that Section 4 is virtually completely ignored. Even the village panchayats that have got websites, they never update their websites. They don't even give information which is so easy to put on the website, like when is the next Gram Panchayat? And when you go and visit the secretary, he says, oh, we put it up in the churches. Does everyone go to church? The intention is that everyone should not know that there is a Gram Panchayat, That is very much the feeling that one gets. What does it take if you've got a website? What does it take to put it onto the website? Next Gram Panchayat in 2 weeks' time, such and such location and such timing. But you know, there again, I don't know what the solution is. I think one just needs to kind of press for tougher implementation of that section in some way. Anyway, that's me done. Thank you very much.
Karan, very, very interesting points, and a lot of interesting points, I should say. Including the thing of people being from the same department, therefore covering up for each other. The thing of panchayats not sharing information. Partly it's because of, I mean, no one wants an open society really, because openness is threatening to all of us, in a sense. And partly it's also technical, no? I mean, like their job is, their primary constituency is somewhere else. Their primary constituency is just managing the crowd. So what we do is we subvert the system and have Facebook village groups where we share the information, and that really travels. Like, so we put it out ourselves. We don't wait for them to put it out. But of course, that is not the solution.
But then, so someone who doesn't happen to belong to that Facebook group,
Right.
or doesn't have to know about the Facebook group, you know.
True.
It would not take a lot, and to put one line onto a website which is already you're administering, it doesn't take a lot. But I don't think the intent is there. They're not acting in good faith. But then that's the main thing.
Yeah. Malan was actually having some problem with his mic, which is sad, because he has this idea about creating this database of, you know, RTI decisions and things like that, which could be shared. Okay, he's saying it's his hardware. He has a hardware problem. Malan has a hardware problem. So in the meanwhile, would someone like to go next? Just 2 minutes talking in the preliminary round, just talking about how you see the act, what are your priorities, what are your problem areas that you see, how we could collaborate.
Good evening,
Mr. Bruno?
everybody.
Yeah, Linus.
Yeah, my name is Linus Talima, calling from Bombay. And initially, I had a problem. Every time I wrote to the police in Porvorim, they would reply that prove your citizenship. I had the same problem with the RBI also. So then I would send something, and now as Mr. Venkatesh has guided me, I write I'm Indian citizen, and I mark something like and I say refer to section 3 of the Act, reference CIC /0, OK C 2008/0016 dated 26/5/2008. I'll put the things on the chat box. And now I have not had any problem with that. However, I filed, since they have mentioned that the Department of Information and Publicity have said to ask for the citizenship every time a RTI application comes. I wrote to them, I filed an RTI with the Department of Information and Publicity at Panjim. 30 days have lapsed, so I filed an appeal, and yesterday was the hearing. And I told the director and the first appellate authority, Deepak Bandekar, that the only reason of me appealing, because I did not get a response. He said, okay, we'll make the available the circular. I called up the PIO separately and I told him, he said, no, I'm still looking out for it. I said, how can you ask your people in the various departments to, refer to it, and you can't produce the circular, no? So anyway, he promised me the week or so, he'll give it to me. Yeah. That's it. Thank you.
This is the circular, Linus, about nationality thing, no?
Yes, Indian citizenship, that's what.
So actually, any excuse is good enough to delay or not give the information.
Obviously, it is a delay tactic, and my experience with Deputy SP at Porvorim is Edwin Colasso writes it first time. Second time when I apply for another somebody else replies. So every time a new Deputy SP is to reply. Okay, because Edwin knows that I am an Indian citizen, but I proved my citizenship. No? Followed. So that's it.
Right.
Okay, the other experience has been good, or rather very good. I could share it later when, is that okay with Venkat, or you want to do it right now? The good experiences?
We'll
no,
keep
that
for
is
later.
fine.
We'll keep for
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we'll
can.
keep it later.
another
No
round.
Can
Let
I-
problem.
more voices come in. No?
Fred, may I just raise a question? That's why I had my hand up. How do we do it? There are several issues which we are very experienced RTI users and participants are raising. So should we take them up to respond to them during the second round? Is that how you would prefer it?
See, if we can just put it out in the chat box,
Some of them will require 1 or 2 minutes of explanation. So
Okay,
typing so much
so-
in will be a problem. Let's take it
so
up in
they
the
can raise
second
their
round.
hand.
Let everybody
They
speak
can,
now. Yeah.
they can, but they can raise their hand because if it's more urgent, I think let's go with it.
Nothing urgent. It can wait. Yeah, because I wanted to respond to a few of the issues that were raised, but I'll wait for the second round.
People are feeling shy to speak up. So Venkat, if you answer some questions now, it might also
Yeah, hello.
Okay,
set the
lovely.
ball rolling.
Thank you. It might stimulate
Bruno,
the discussion.
go ahead, Bruno.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, Bruno
Please.
Gomez. Bruno Gomez. I'm NRI. I'm based in Switzerland. I'm a consular in Switzerland, and I had an issue in Goa because I'm still connected to Goa. Bought and brought up in Goa, studied in Goa, and immigrated to Switzerland. I'm based in Switzerland. The only thing is what I want to do, just to bring to your notice, is that I had an issue with the Panchayat, and due to some issue, one of my case went to right to 10 years because of the compound wall. And unfortunately, the Panchayat, without informing us, they got an order, I don't know from where, and they broke my wall. And then since I was not there, nobody was there, they broke my wall. And I went to the Panchayat and I asked for the Right to Information Act. I wrote to them. And then the secretary said he will give me the information in 30 days as per the act. As I read the act, I know a little bit of it. And then finally, when I went to him asking 30 days elapsed, what you're doing? And he said, no, I cannot give it to you. And it was my time to come back to Switzerland. And then afterwards it was followed up, and I took my advocate and I told him, advocate, please look after it. And the guy, the advocate, went to the Panchayat. They said they cannot give it to me because I'm not a citizen. Okay, one point. Second point, I asked my sister to write to get the information. She's a Indian citizen, and she wrote to it. And since I had drafted the letter from here and I told her to sign, and she signed it, and then they saw that there was my address was there, and they said this is not the right letter, so they cannot give the information. So I made an appeal to the Mamladar, who is that BDO, I don't know what, that is the BDO, and from BDO, it went, my lawyer went and asked them what about this. Then the same thing, the same question came, is that I had to prove to them that whether I'm as an Indian citizen. My question is, I'm NRI, I am a OCI holder. Do OCI have a right to ask for the information or not?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and it affects a large number of people in Goa because of the diaspora from the state. Of course, Venkat could give the right answer on it. I think that Augusto Pinto the other day also said that as per the law, you have to be an Indian citizen in that sense, but nothing prevents anyone else from asking for the information on your behalf, and we don't need to show any interest or reason for that interest. For example, very clearly there was this Finnish guy who was killed in Goa, young tourist in his 20s, early 20s, and his aunt and mother were really desperate for information, so they wanted to get something. So I drafted and passed it on to someone or something, or I submitted or something. I forget what the details were, but we got the information for them. They got the information some one way or the other. So I'm thinking now, what would it take to set up maybe a small help desk, which is not a huge organization or anything of its own, but a small help desk that can raise RTI queries pro bono, in Goa, maybe follow it up. Of course, it takes time and energy, but something like that, if it could be done, because there's a lot of pessimism about the act and how people are blocking the act and all, which is also valid, no doubt. But we need to find solutions. Venkat, any comments on this, please?
Yeah. So thank you, Fred. I will just comment on the citizenship issue. Linus has already posted a case number of a CIC order from 2008, where the Central Information Commission has made a determination about when and how citizenship status must be ascertained by the Public Information Officer. I hope what I am talking about, I also am familiar with one case, but I don't remember the case number, so that's what I want to do. I'm not sure if the two are the same, or if, because there have been multiple cases that have come to the CIC. Now, Section 3 says very clearly that only citizens are entitled to seek information. Now, this has multiple dimensions to it. There is a decision from the High Court of Punjab and Haryana from about 2012 or 2013. I can share that on the WhatsApp group later on once the webinar is over, because you can't have everything at one's disposal to be able to share on this webinar. So I'm making notes of what I need to share. So what the Punjab and Haryana High Court says is this, that there is no compulsion in the RTI Act that one RTI application must be submitted in the name and under the signature of only one person. A single RTI application can be submitted by a group of Indian citizens. There is no bar on that. So you don't have to file 10 RTIs, but if 10 people put their names and put their signatures on a single RTI application and simply indicate who amongst the 10 of them would be responsible for paying the fees and collecting the information, and that address is mentioned, it is adequate. So filing RTIs in groups without actually having to file the same RTI multiple times is now permitted under law. That's point number one. Point number two, you can ask information on behalf of trusts, companies, societies, media houses, or even your own family members, and advocate on behalf of his or her client. That is also permissible. There are series of decisions from the Central Information Commission that hold such RTI applications as being valid. Only requirement is the applicant's name should be clearly mentioned and the applicant's signature must be there at the bottom. So if somebody files an RTI on the letterhead of an organization but mentions his name and puts a signature, that is valid. It cannot be treated as a request that is coming from an organization or a company or a trust, and therefore they are not citizens. That is not valid. There are series of cases on this. Now we come to the issue of citizenship. In the case of the National Human Rights Commission, where the Public Information Officer demanded to see the citizenship status of the applicant, and therefore that became the basis for not processing the application further, and it was even rejected, I think. Central Information Commission laid down a very important principle that for the Public Information Officer to doubt the citizenship status of an applicant, there must be some material basis in front of him or her to doubt the citizenship. If that is not there, then simply on the basis of the person's name or just of him, the Public Information Officer cannot demand proof of citizenship. Now, this is applicable across central government. Many of the states also continue to apply this principle. However, there are some states like Sikkim, or there might be institutions, some specific institutions in some of the other states where they demand proof of citizenship. Like Orissa is another example. They don't demand citizenship proof, they demand identity proof. It is written into their rules. Thankfully, Goa has none of that. But Goa, there will be one serious problem. And I'm sure that this is particularly raised against people who have what looks like non-Hindu sounding names. And that is an extremely unfortunate practice. That cannot be the basis for discriminating anybody from seeking information simply because somebody's got a name like Frederick Nolona or Gomez Bruno. That is not the basis. There must be some materials for doubting the citizenship status, something concrete that the PIO must know outside of the RTI application. Only then can they insist on citizenship proof production. If they don't respond to your RTI and you are a bona fide citizen of the country, then you can challenge this through appeals or even through a direct complaint to the State Information Commission, irrespective of what the Supreme Court said in the Manipur case. We will talk about that a little later. Now, as far as OCI people, and this is my last point, OCI, to my understanding, I did some research on this long back. I'm not too sure if OCI is something that continues, because I remember reading a government document which says that OCI is no longer a valid category, but if they continue to use it, OCI, the understanding is that they are people who are of Indian origin, but they are not Indian citizens per se, because they have either given up or their citizenship status is now linked with some other country. India does not allow dual citizenship. the best of my knowledge. But at the same time, Goa has a peculiar situation, which I'm not very familiar with, so I'll not comment on that. But generally speaking, if you are an Indian citizen based in India, irrespective of what your name is, if you are an Indian citizen who is based outside the territory of India, you can still file RTIs in your name. The only difficulty will be for central government, because there are RTI online. There is an RTI online portal. It does not matter whether you mention your address outside of the country. They will have to still give you information electronically or give you a response. But if you are filing with any of the state governments where your address is based abroad and you want the information from India, it does create a bit of a problem. So then the best thing to do, rather than get defeated by these technical and idiotic, actions of PIOs to frustrate you from seeking information, just ask somebody who's got an address in India whom you trust to make that RTI application for you. Like I said, you can ask information on anybody's behalf. You don't even need to submit an authorization letter. So therefore, please use these tactics to overcome these strategies put in place by public information officers to frustrate you from seeking information. So that is what I wanted to say on this particular topic. I'll stop here.
Thank you.
Venkat, if I could just add on this issue of RTI, of
Yeah.
OCI, no? See, it seems to be an important issue which will come up again and again. So we maybe need to take a short-term and a long-term perspective. The short-term being that you ask someone locally to do it. We work out some system that, if we have some solidarity or some network or something that could be done. But the long-term strategy is this. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand this well enough. But OCI has always been defined in terms of what you cannot do. Okay. In the past, of course, there is a debate about whether OCI continues or not. All those things are there. But in the past, what we were told about OCI is that you cannot stand for elections. You're as good as an Indian citizen. You cannot stand for elections. You cannot hold agricultural land. Okay. So if it is defined by what you cannot do rather than what you can do, where does RTI stand as far as OCI goes? That may call for some clarification. Anyway, that's a long-term issue. But if someone else wants to hop in here and introduce themselves, I see Rui Ferreira also here. Thank you for coming, and Anjali is there, and Honest and a few others. Please, we are giving 2 minutes time just to have initial statements. Then we'll go in for wider discussions. Just tell us if you can, what are the issues you're facing, where you think there is hope, where you think people are blocking the act, and what we could do as a group. Please, anyone, raise your hand and just go for it.
While we're waiting, this is Karan again. Could I just ask Venkat a couple of clarificatory questions on this OCI and citizenship issue? Number one is just a point I'd like to make, which I think, Frederick, you alluded to. OCI actually stands for Overseas Citizen of India. Now, if it stands for Overseas Citizen of India, and any citizen of India is allowed to apply, then, I guess it is questionable whether, you should be given that information, I would have thought. But that's just a, side issue. The other thing I wanted to ask was, you said that under the law, it appears as though they're not entitled, PIOs are not entitled to ask you to prove your citizenship unless there's a kind of, I think you mentioned a material basis for doubt. Could you give some, you did say what, the name should not be a material basis for doubt, but could you give some examples of what would prove to be a material basis for doubt? That would be very helpful. And then the other thing that I just wanted to ask is this business of having citizenship as a criteria not actually bad in law, considering that there must be literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of people in India who do not have any document which would prove citizenship. I mean, the only two documents that I can think of that would prove citizenship would be, number one, a passport. And I know that there literally are hundreds of millions of Indians who don't have a passport. And then number two would be a voter ID card. And that too, there must be literally tens of millions of people. Certainly anyone below the age of 18 who is a citizen of India would not have a voter ID card. So then how would you prove citizenship when there is no such documentation that can be used for proving citizenship?
Fred, may I respond?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Please,
go
So there are very valid points that you've raised, sir. Let me start with the last point. In fact, since I was closely involved in the advocacy process when the bill was drafted and was being considered in Parliament, we actually made a very detailed submission on this issue. Two things we said. That look, how does it matter whether you restrict access rights to citizens. Because if anybody, including a citizen of India, asks for information that is legitimately exempt under Section 8, 9, or 24 of the RTI Act, even citizens won't get it. Why? Foreigners won't get it, obviously. And if there is information that a citizen can get, what is the harm in allowing access to that information, so long as it is not some third party's personal information? Why can't it be allowed to a non-citizen also? And then the last point that we argued was that, look, when you put up Section 4 disclosure on your websites, or you print it in the form of a manual, where is your guarantee to ensure that it will be accessed only by citizens of India? Anybody can access it. Somebody can sit in the corner of Timbuktu, open our Government of India websites, and access all the information that is uploaded there, which is not password protected, or which does not require a login ID. So we made all these arguments. But then Parliament, particularly the committee, the standing committee, because I'm privy to some of these discussions, that's why I'm explaining to you what was their logic. The logic that they made was this, that the very first judgment on the right to know, which is State of Uttar Pradesh versus Rajnarayan, and then SP Gupta versus President of India, and a series of others, which the Supreme Court pronounced, recognizing the right to know, they were all deemed to be a fundamental right within the meaning and scope of Article 19(1)(a), that guarantees the right to freedom of speech and expression. And therefore, the DOPT stand before the Parliamentary Committee was that Article 19 rights are available only to citizens, and therefore this must be restricted only to citizens. We argued in counter to that, and we said that, look, the right to know is not just linked with Article 19(1)(a). There are at least two very important Supreme Court judgments where the right to know is connected with Article 21, which is the right to life and liberty. And the right to life and liberty is guaranteed by the Constitution to any person who comes within the jurisdiction of India, territorially or administratively. And therefore, there is no reason why RTI should be limited only to citizens. But at that point of time, the Parliamentary Committee, even though it was dominated by the UPA people at that point of time, they did not want to go the extreme step like many European countries or America or several other Latin American countries do, by opening up rights of access to citizens or to non-citizens. And that is where they decided the matter and said, for the time being, we will just leave it as far as citizens are concerned with access rights. Other things we can see much later on. Let us first test the law and how it applies. That's number one. Now, when I look at the definition of OCI, as given on the Bureau of Immigration website of the Government of India, there are several categories where the person who is an OCI, recognized as an OCI, is actually not a citizen of India. And that's the reason why they get deprived. So if you want to take up the advocacy issue on the longer term, you can make it an election issue in the next elections in Goa. So please demand transparency, please demand access rights under the RTA Act, particularly with focus on Goans, saying that, look, there are these problems that we are facing. So why don't you bring in a clear rule which says that Goans should be allowed to access the Right to Information Act centrally, and there should be no problems created within the scope of Section 3. Longer term, you can say get rid of Section 3 entirely and say any person may access these rights, but that will be a longer battle to fight. Like I put in the chat box, and this is my last point. If you want clarity on whether an OCI category person can or cannot access information, the right thing to do would be, and I'm sure somebody might have already thought of this, but there is no harm in repeating it. You can file an RTI application with the Department of Personnel and Training in the Government of India to get their understanding of whether OCI is covered by the RTI Act or not. And I can help to do that draft after this webinar is over, maybe over a couple of days. That's all I want to react. I think I have responded to most of the issues that the previous speaker has raised. I'll stop here.
Very interesting and very detailed reply, Venkat, as always. Of course, there is a short-term and a long-term issue involved here. As you're saying, the long-term issue also needs to be tackled. The short-term issue we will. Anyone else wanting to introduce, or if we are not forcing anyone to speak here, if you're not comfortable in speaking or you want to speak later, that's certainly fine. If no one else wants their 2 minutes, then we go in for Q&A. And we request you to keep the questions short. The answers may or may not be short depending on the person's answering them. Rui, Anjali, people I know.
May I interrupt?
Yes, Linus, your hand is raised, please.
Yeah, the experience I've had with Goa only is when you ask for information, they say when you're collecting it, please produce your I-card. Okay. What I do is ask them to send by post, no I-card, no identity is asked. But if you're coming in person, you bring your I-card along and take it. Otherwise, they're not going to give you the documents. And this is whether it is with electricity department, PWD, the municipal corporation or any of the other places. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. Not only,
Yeah. So I prefer to send it by post and I get it and it's okay, good enough. Yeah, thank you.
Someone wants to speak, someone wants to ask questions, please.
I just wanted to ask a couple of questions if I can.
Ask.
Yeah, the reason I asked about ID even by post is that if the ID is there, then the citizenship is clear on that, whether it's voter's ID or whatever. So if you just post it along with it. The second question I wanted to ask what Venkatesh said about group RTIs, that is interesting. So for example, now in terms of COVID, I haven't done any RTIs. I've just been sort of aware of RTIs and following what happens with RTIs or RTI activists, that's all. So in this, like in COVID preparedness, can RTIs, group RTIs be done on that, where are the hospitals, how many beds, how many, where are the oxygen, provision being done, what is the protocol? Those kinds of questions can be asked in RTI as a group.
Yes, the short point is yes, you can ask. Please do.
Okay.
See, the group or not group has nothing to do with the content of the query, I guess. No. So if someone wants to reject you, whether it's group or individual, they will reject, and if they want to accept, they would accept. But the interesting thing is that you can do it in a group. Another question related to the group, Venkat, is can some of the groups be citizens and some not? Then what happens? It gets rejected or what?
No, it does create a problem. But you see, RTI filing in Solidarity, my own experience has been that it actually works like a miracle. When they see multiple names, one address, they know that this is a mobilized group. Does not have to be backed up by a formal registered organization, society, or trust. Just the fact there are 10 people asking this information, they cannot play the same kind of game, because you see what is happening is this. When you sign the RTI application as a lone individual, it is a one-to-one relationship with the PIO. The moment you have more than one person, the PIO is always in a minority. So therefore, you are on a much stronger wicket when you file RTIs in a group. That's why we recommend that these RTIs be filed in a group. Before the Punjab Haryana High Court decision came in, what did we do? Whenever we learned that a friend of ours or an RTI activist who we didn't even know was being threatened or harassed for seeking information, we would ask for a copy of that RTI application and we would find the same thing from our address. I have done that with people who are threatened in Assam. I've done that with people who've been threatened in Karnataka. And what would happen as a result of our RTIs is, since we're asking the same information, they would send us a fee request, but they would end up giving the information to the local applicant without any charge because they had delayed, they had gone beyond the 30 days. So it has really worked. So let us try this RTI filing in Solidarity. What happens if somebody is not a citizen? Then the person has to, like I put in the chat box, it's not enough to just show one identity proof ki copy, no? How do you know it is genuine? Public information officer must actually be taken to court for simply accepting that the ID proof was genuine without verifying it with the issuing authority. So there is no end to it. We should point out all of these problems in our advocacy document and say that, look, this artificial divide between citizens and non-citizens must be ended. Work on the long-term solution. Say that access to information under the RTI law is and should be available to anybody and everybody. The exemptions are more than enough to take care of things which are sensitive so that they don't fall in the hands of non-citizens, because as it is, they are not going to be allowed access to citizens. So what is the harm?
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. Particularly this group filing and solidarity filing is I never thought of it that way, I must say.
Hi, it's Karan again.
Questions. Yeah, questions.
I just want to ask a quick question on that. Yeah, first of all, just an observation, I guess, about the group filing. I have done the group filing once, and I completely agree with that statement that it kind of puts the PIO in a weaker position and he's much more on the back foot. And yeah, it's to do with strength in numbers and the fact that, if he is to harass, one person, is much easier than if he was to try and harass 10 people. I also completely agree with the concept that it's a bit of a nonsense to deny it to non-citizens. Also very interested to hear that there are many countries where you have similar laws and it is open to foreigners to use them as well. Just in terms of the practicality of this business of collecting the information when it is deemed to be ready, I think I mentioned this on the WhatsApp group as well. I have had one situation where I had applied for some information. It didn't come within the 30 days. And when I went back after the 30 days, I was told by the PIO that it's been waiting for you here, right? Now, is there anything in the Act? I don't believe there is anything in the Act, but I might have missed it. Is there anything in the Act which says that once the person has compiled the information, that he's got the information together, it's his job to inform the applicant that it is there and either available for collection or that he will post it? And is there a protocol when we are dealing with non-online applications, like at the state level in Goa, for example, that it must be posted if it isn't collected within the 30 days? Or, is there any sort of protocol that must be followed by the PIO if he genuinely does have the information ready in 30 days and it has not been communicated yet to the applicant? And the second is, when it is done by post, I've never had the experience of having anything sent to me by post, but when it is done by post, what is the procedure then for making the payment based on the number of photocopies? Do you make the payment after you receive it? Or is he supposed to send you a letter saying, right, I've got it ready, there's 10 pages, that equates to whatever, 20 rupees. You then send across the 20 rupees by post. Once he gets the 20 rupees, then he sends it across to you. And do you also have to pay for his postage? I mean, these are all minor points, but I'm very interested in how the mechanics works. Thanks.
Karan, if I could just interrupt, I'm not the expert here, but still my experience is this. The first part of the transaction makes sense to do by post, where you send in the application via the post office or whatever. Even post offices accept it. I think they're still doing, I'm not very sure. They used to accept it for even no postal rates, 10 rupees and that's it. So the first part you use the post, and the second part it becomes too much of kitpit and trouble. So that's where you could actually go in person to pick it up. No?
So then you have to keep going every 5 days, every 10 days, or at the end of 30 days, or what?
They are supposed to inform you. You're giving one side of the story. The other side of the story is mine. I went after 3 or 4 months, to pick up some information, and they were good enough to give it to me, and they were flustered, saying that, after how long have you come? And they had actually told me, come and pick it up, but I just didn't have the time. After how long are you coming? And they realized, and I realized, that there was nothing in the law that said that you have to pick it up within a certain number of days or something. Maybe Venkat could clarify on this situation.
Yeah, let me explain this. What I would like to request everybody here, since you are all you have experience of using the right to information, and you've sought information or you have obtained it, I would urge you to do 2 things. One is, please always keep on your mobile phone or on your laptop a copy of the RTI Act and your applicable central RTI rules and the Goan RTI rules ready for quick reference. It really helps to keep reading these laws and rules frequently. I have also posted the web link to our RTI user guide in English so that you can download it for free and make use of it. The step-by-step process of seeking information, including filing appeals and complaints, are explained in this user guide. It's a 2018 version. It does not have the 2019 amendments made to the Act and the rules because they came much later. But if you want the amendments that have been made, I can share them also. Now, to respond to your query, you see, what is the scheme of the RTI Act? You file an RTI application under section 6(1). Then the public information officer has to make a determination of, the first thing that he has to determine is this: whether he or she holds the information in their office, or whether that information that you're asking is completely connected to the working of that office, or it is more closely connected to the working of some other office. If the latter is the case, it's more closely connected to the working of some other office, even though that office may have it, or if they don't have it at all, but some other office has it, they have to transfer that RTI application within 5 days. So that is the first determination that they have to make. The second determination, Once the PIO realizes that yes, A, information is available in that office, and B, it relates too closely to the working of that office, then they have to take a call on whether to disclose the information or not. Under section 7.1, the time limit for making this second stage decision is 30 days ordinarily. In urgent matters relating to people's life and liberty, it is 48 hours. We'll not get into that right now. So once the person makes a determination that this information sought is with us, but it comes under any of the exemptions, within the 30-day period, that person has to send you a rejection letter free of cost. They can't charge you for that. But if that PIO makes a determination that no exemptions are applicable, the information is fit for disclosure, they have to first indicate to you the total number of pages that will have to be photocopied and given to you. They will have to apply the fee rates applicable in your state. Most of the states, it is 2 rupees. In 1 or 2 states, it is more than 2 rupees. They have to give you the total calculation. Fee rules will indicate what is the mode of fee payment, and you have to make the fee payment once you receive the fee intimation letter. It has to be in writing. Sometimes they call you up on the phone also. You can go and make the payment, but always insist on the fee intimation letter to be given to you either by post or by, you go and collect it by hand. Always make sure that in your RTI application, even though the act does not say it, the rules don't say it anywhere, it's pure and plain common sense. Laws cannot provide for all situations. They will provide only the overall schema of what the law intends to do and expects the duty holders to do, and what the rights of the rights bearers are. So therefore, everything is not provided for it in it. So when you file the RTI application, you please indicate whether you want the information by post, or whether you will go and collect it in person, or whether you want the information to be sent to you electronically, which means that they should hold the information in their custody electronically. They don't have a duty to convert a paper-based file into an electronic form and give it to you at the rate of 2 rupees per page. So that will come under section 7.9. We can discuss that a little later, what is the scope and ambit of 7.9. Anyway, so that fee intimation letter has to come to you. Then you make the fee payment. Now the time limit between the sending of the fee intimation letter and you actually making the fee payment is not included in the 30-day period. Why? Because if you feel that you've been charged exorbitant fees, then you have a right to seek review before the appellate authority. If the appellate authority also agrees with the PIO, you can escalate the matter to the commission also. That is the combined reading of section 7.1, 7.3, and section 19.1 and 19.3 of the RTI Act. So until that entire process is over, your RTI application will still stay alive. 30-day period does not get over. But the moment you pay your fees, the remainder of the 30-day period will kick in. So within the rest of that period of whatever remains in the 30-day period, they have to give you the information. So always specify in what mode you want to access. You will go and collect it in person, or you want it by post. Except when I seek inspection of records, I have always sought information by post, or these days, especially after COVID, I tell them the information that I'm asking you is to be disclosed under section 4.1b, and I make out a case. And I say, put this on your website, send me the URL. In some cases, they put it on the website. In most other cases, they actually send it to me electronically, or they send it by post. Very often it is free of charge, because I'm saying it is 4.1b. This works with central government. It may not work with the state governments, where the rule of law is not yet a very entrenched value to the extent that it is entrenched in central government. Even in central government, there is a problem, but let's leave that aside. So except at the time of inspection, where you go and seek inspection of records, you can actually ask for information to be sent to you by post. Now, my last point. When you ask for inspection, what very often happens is this. This happens in central government, this happens in state government. They will allow you inspection, and then they will say, okay, matter closed, tata, bye-bye. So what you have to do is this. When you ask for inspection, like many of our friends do in Maharashtra, they have perfected this art. They say, I want to inspect the files relating to A, B, C, D, E. And during the inspection, I will identify specific pages contained in that particular file. Please make arrangements to give me photocopies or certified copies. Both are permissible under section 2J of the RTI Act. You specify that in your RTI applications, which means that you don't have to file 2 RTI applications, first for inspection and then to get copies. So please be clear on that. Put it that way. They cannot charge you 10 rupees extra if you ask for 2 forms of access. You will only be charged for the inspection period. Generally, first hour is free. After that, depending upon the state rules, it is either 5 rupees for every subsequent 15 minutes, or it is 5 rupees for every subsequent hour. And then they can charge you only at the rate of 2 rupees per page for the photocopies that you want. certified copies also will be charged only at 2 rupees per page. There is a DOPT circular which says very clearly that the certified copy right of access given in the RTI Act is of a different category as compared to the Indian Evidence Act. I think section 74, which says certified copy, or 72. I can't remember, I'm not a lawyer, somewhere in 72, 74. So there, that is a completely different process. Civil Procedure Code, access to certified copies is a completely different process. It's got nothing to do with RTI Act. Under the RTI Act, there's a DOPT circular, which says, this is how you certify a copy of the document and you give it to the applicant. Who should certify documents of manageable size? Who should certify copies of documents of large size is also mentioned in the DOPT OM. I can share that with you later on. By email, I could probably send it to Fred and then he can share it with everybody. So please be informed of these multiple guidelines, what is required in the law itself to be very clear, and then file your RTIs. Don't start looking at the RTI Act after the dash has hit the fan, or if you are facing challenges or you've come up with obstruction. First equip yourself, because you're all people who know the RTI Act exists in writing. You can read it, you can understand it much better than a person who is unlettered. So equip yourself first with the knowledge and then go ahead and file your RTIs. This is what I want to say.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Very interesting. Yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
No, I was just going to say thank you very much.
Very interesting inputs, because these small procedural things make a big difference. Whether you go once for inspection and then for another round for getting the copies, it's not so much the money, the 10 rupees, but the waste of time. And even, the more time you take, the greater chance of the process getting interrupted. Rui and company, some substantial issues, because while procedure is also important, we need to be looking at, wider issues that can make a real difference. Anyone had major problems or any points where you particularly get stuck? I find that the panchayats in Goa take it quite lackadaisically. They're just not bothered. You ask them for copies of minutes of the meetings, they'll send you something. They may not respond in the first place. If they respond, it'll be badly handwritten. You can hardly read what they're saying. And, so they're subverting the law in spirit, if not in letter.
Can I say something?
Please, Avinash, please.
Yeah. So in my experience, there has been different kind of response letters that I get. One type would be, if I ask questions, what we expect is a point-by-point reply, as well as in the reply how much money you would have to pay, and then the total amount written below. Sometimes they'll just say, this is the amount, please come and pay and take that document. You don't know how many pages you're getting. You don't know what you're getting, in fact. And sometimes they just say, your reply is ready, please come and this thing. They don't mention even the amount. So it depends a lot on the PIO or the APIO that is going to give you the information. Now, the worst case scenario, when you ask point-by-point questions and they say, please come and inspect the files. You're not asked for inspection, but they just don't want to give you a point by, suppose like in the panchayat, you ask for a sanat copy of a construction plan, a construction this. They say your file is ready, kindly come and inspect and collect the documents. It's literally just in one line they say it. So a lot depends on that. And I guess that's something about experience and how you go about it, whether you, while filing the RTI, make it very clear with the PIO what you want, or you just have to, wait till the reply, and once you go there, you'll figure out what kind of reply they're giving you. The other issue which I face with the collectorate building is that they're using that, different rates of 50 rupees for a document, even though they're not issuing you a fresh order, but they're charging you, the prices which are in the prescribed rates, even though they're just ordinary correspondence of notices and all that stuff. So by the time you fight it, it kind of tires you out, especially when you're in a hurry for that information. So I got a reply saying that come and pay 350 rupees. And when I went there, just like 7 pages. And it was just some notices sent to the complainant and all that kind of documentation. So that's how they kind of play those games. But one of the things which helps is a good relation with their postman, because they send the reply exactly on the 28th day. They post it on the 28th day, which reaches you on the 30th day. So many post offices don't hit the stamp very clearly. And if they do, then you get to if they cross 30 days, if you received, if the stamp is on the 31st day, then it's easy to claim, free of cost RTIs, rather the exemption of the fees. So these are like the small things that kind of, once you are that make a difference when it comes to filing RTIs. But yeah, make it very clear with the PIO in the beginning itself what you are expecting, and ask them to send you the cover letter with the costing of the individual documents. That's something I do rather than just file the RTI and come out. I say this is what I want, and please send me the point-by-point reply when you say, because that doesn't cost. That is just the post that they give. Yeah.
That's about the funniest thing I've heard today, that a good relationship with your postman really helps, and it comes from a lot of experience, because understanding these small nitty-gritties and even getting your stamp, postal stamp correct, can make a big difference in getting the information free.
Yeah,
Or what Avinash mentioned about
what happens
asking.
is what happens is if you write up a letter to, say, the PWD, the central office, or the power department, the central office, they send letters to every division and subdivision. So the postman is the guy who has to come on your door every second day, and deliver one notice to you saying that, okay, this letter's come from Ponda, from Panjim, from all the other places. So yeah, you need to have a good relation with the postman, otherwise.
That's correct. That's correct. Since you raised this point about the government departments making us chase information across the state, once I got this reply, it was just trying to collate information about RTIs asked under the Goa Act within Goa itself. And they told me that we have 140 or whatever departments. You can please go and ask them at that level. So at that stage, this MK Joss was active, and he was quite a acerbic letter writer. So I asked him for advice. So he wrote a reply which I processed in my name, and his first line, I still remember it till date. It said, it was addressed to the information director, who was my friend. He said, you are trying to tire me out financially and physically by sending me to all these departments. And it was a strong worded reply. So the guys read it, and they actually collated the information and they gave it to me. And after they gave it to me, this was the Goa Act. They said, thank you so much for asking this, because when Arun Churi, that time Minister for Administrative Reforms or something, came down, he wanted to understand the Goa Act. And just because of this RTI, they had all the information about what were the RTIs being asked, and they could offer it to them. But as you're saying, all these tricks really tire you out in that sense. So they are sending you to the different departments. You have to make the payments, the 10 rupees, 15 rupees. That's not the point, but making the payments is an issue. Sorry. Rui, I'm waiting for Rui to speak up. He's being very silent. Or anyone else? Karan is.
I seem to be speaking a lot. But one more question that just comes to my mind. This is in relation to inspection of files. When you have requested to inspect files. Now, I haven't done it myself, but I probably will at some point. My question is there some way you should word your RTI application letter to ensure, or to at least reduce the chances that the files that you are shown are complete? So what I'm thinking of, for example, is a situation where, let's say you have filed a complaint against some unlawful construction, and you want to look at all the files that relate to the action they have taken following receipt of your complaint. Now, what is to stop them from showing you one file which is showing one action that they have taken, and not 5 other files which they've got hidden somewhere, and they say, look, we showed you the file. So is there some way to word your letter to make sure that you get shown all the files? And is there any way of knowing what all the files are?
Exactly as you said it, no, Karan. You say that I want to inspect all these files related to such and such case. Yeah, all related files.
They could still just show you one file, and you'd be none the wiser, right? How would you know whether you've been shown all?
When you say all related, they are supposed to put it up front, because tomorrow if you find some other file which was not shown, Venkat, something on this?
I just wanted to respond to that. You see, there is very little that you can do in your RTI application above and beyond what Fred has suggested. However, please remember the other thing, I'm sorry, now I'm going to share with you wisdom of something that is based on a saying in my native language of Kannada. It's there in Tamil as well. We have a saying which says that, that how do you outsmart somebody who is very clever, particularly clever by half? So if they are clever enough to, let's say, crawl under a straw mat, you counter them by developing the wisdom to crawl under what is called rangoli or kolam, that white powder that you use to make designs in front of the houses, the front yard of Hindu families. So we call that rangoli in Kannada, or we call that kolam in Tamil. So there is hardly any space between the ground and that powder which lies on it. So you've got to be clever enough to crawl right under that. So what you need to do is this. You need to actually also equip yourself with some basic understanding of office procedures adopted across your state government. Now, there is something called a common office procedure manual that gives a clear list of procedures that every government agency must adopt for opening files on any topic. So you must first familiarize yourself with that. Before I filed RTIs, because most of my RTIs are filed with central government, I read up what is called the Central Secretariat Manual of Office Procedure, which is publicly available on the website of the Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances. State government office manuals are not easily available on websites. They should be, but often they are not. But generally they are available in good law bookstores, or you simply write to the department that is responsible for general administration or personnel and administration and ask for a copy of the office manual. That will tell you how files must be opened, numbered, interconnected, etc., etc. Now, generally, the understanding is this: starting with the central government down to many state governments, they are adopting what is called a single file system. I'm not sure whether Goa has yet started adopting this single file system method. The idea in a single file system is that there should not be multiple files on a single subject matter, even though multiple departments or ministries might be involved in the decision-making process and the consultation process. Even in the absence of a single file system, very often, when you send complaints to a department or agency, only one file is opened on that issue. It might run into multiple volumes if it is a complex matter. That's different. But you will not have 15 different files opened just on the basis of your complaint. But if there are 15 different complaints, chances are there might be 15 different files, or they might all be clubbed into one file. So therefore, asking for all the files is important, number one. Then how do you identify whether there are multiple files on this issue or not? If the office is following good practice of office administration, every file that is connected to another file, both should mention each other's file number. That is an example of good practice in records management according to the records management rules adopted by government. If they don't mention it, it's bad practice. I don't know how to give you a solution for that problem, but generally connecting files, the file number and the subject matter must be mentioned on the main file and also on the subsequent files. Now, if there is a single file that has been opened, but it is running into multiple volumes, then the volumes should also mention volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. How do I know this? Not just CSMOP, which I read, but when I do file inspections, I've also come across this kind of practice in central government. But I'm sorry, I cannot say that it might apply to state government as well. You will have to see what is the process, what is the practice in Goa. Generally, the understanding is the basic principles of file management, records management are reasonably uniform across the country. There might be minor changes here and there, but it's not too revolutionarily, it's not a revolutionary change between governments. That's number one. The last point I want to mention, every file will have two parts. On the left-hand side of the file will be the file notings. On the right-hand side will be the correspondence. They have to be numbered separately. Central government follows this practice very strictly. Unfortunately, in many state governments, they are mixed up. File notings are written on the correspondence sheets themselves. Okay, so that is a bit of a problem. However, the basic rule, either way, whether you do it in two parts or you just do a jumble up because the fellow is too lazy or simply nobody has trained him in how to do file management, they have to number every single page. Okay. And then that will give you clarity on whether pages are missing in between. Second thing is this. Now in files, there are two categories. Category number one is something called a recorded file. What does it mean? It means that the file that has been opened on that subject matter has served its purpose, decision has been taken, it's been implemented, the government agency no longer has any use for that file. So what they do is they record it, which means they stitch it up and send it to the records room. That is a recorded file. The second category of files is something called a live file, which means the decision-making process or the implementation of that decision is still continuing, and that file will still be available on somebody's desk in that particular government office. It's not sent to the records room. And ideally speaking, under section 41A of the RTI Act, all these details about recorded files, about live files, they must be publicly proactively disclosed by the public authority concerned. It is 41A read with two provisions in 41B. I can't remember the exact subclause number now, but one says directory of all the files that they hold in their custody in paper form, and then details of all the files that they hold in electronic form in their custody. All this information must be made publicly available. Why? So that there is certainty about the kinds of files and the kinds of subject matter on which files are opened and held by every record creating agency. Unfortunately, this practice, even commissions ignore. They keep making recommendations, but nobody takes it seriously. As a result of which, you have problems like missing files, disappeared files, files that went missing in floods, even though the entire city wasn't, or the entire region was under a drought for the last 10 years, or files destroyed in fire, even though nobody even lit a cigarette in that building for the last 10 years. All kinds of excuses are given. There is a very strongly developed case law in Delhi and in Maharashtra, the Delhi High Court and Bombay High Court, about what people's rights are, requesters' rights are when a government agency claims that the file has gone missing. So we can take that topic up if somebody is interested later on. Otherwise, I'll be speaking for too long. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Very, very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, very informative, and there's a lot of science to it. We only understand it when we encounter it. Apart from the corruption thing, I think efficiency in governance is also something that, although it's a distant dream and we have lots of problems, I'm not saying it's so easy to attain, but RTI can maybe take us on this road. Avinash, you want to say something? There is time for everyone, please. The faster you step in, the better, because towards the end we'll be running short of time. So now there is time. You want to raise some pressing issues, please feel free to. Problem areas, whatever, plans for a centralized database. I think that is critical, no? Having the information out there is going to be critical, because if we know what others are filing for what information they are getting, it could trigger off many more effective RTIs. Because as of now, we are going by hearsay. We need to see, we need to be doubting Thomases and see the proof there. Rui, tell us something a little bit about your experiences with RTIs. Rui Ferreira. No. Okay, if there are no questions, then maybe we could look at this RTI portal, how it could, how it could help us, how practical it is to do, how difficult it is. Any comments?
If you Google search RTI Goa, there is already an RTI portal for the internal use, for the government's internal use. There's some login thing and all we get. I think it's a common platform all over the country, which they're not giving access to for Goa in terms of for the applicants. So it just needs a demand actually from with the governor or the government to get it implemented. And maybe we can link it to human rights also, because a lot of people who have disabilities cannot physically go there at RTI. So maybe it can be linked to that as well.
No, that is correct. Avinash, what you're saying there is correct. I've also seen if you Google for Goa and RTI, you get those two links. And one is a portal, but what portal is that? Is it a portal giving data of information asked, information received, or questions processed, or what exactly is going on there? Because I don't know, we'll have to.
It's an internal communication. So instead of sending
Yeah.
physical letters to different departments, so they can internally, like how the central portal does that. So it just for convenience that the concerned officer can be forwarded the
Okay. But I don't think they would be tracking, see, because the government is not bothered about tracking, say the overall picture. That's our concern. No, who is raising the questions? How effective are they? Where are they getting blocked? What is the potential to get information which is useful for the citizen? That's our issue. The government is normally not keeping track of this unless we go through an MLA and ask a assembly question. But that will be one off. That will not be on an ongoing basis.
Okay, you're talking about the RTI for the RTI activists, right? Not the one which you apply for an RTI. Is that correct me if I'm wrong? You're talking about a portal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry, I thought it was for someone who can apply for an RTI.
Yeah. So Malan was talking about building a database of all the RTI cases coming up, just so that we know what is going on. We get a wider lay of the land and we can understand the situation. Otherwise, we are seeing bits and pieces of it, mainly through episodic reporting, which is not complete. Om has raised his hand. Om, please. Yeah, please.
Hi, am I audible?
You are.
Yeah. So as far as this online repository is concerned, I was discussing this with Malan the other day as well. We can broadly, the few components which we can have is one would be what has already been discussed, like a common database of like information which is asked and to which department, so on and so forth. That would be one element. And then the element could be like a cases for the common issues which people face, like 30 days grounds for rejection, so on and so forth. Another element could be some sort of FAQ, like a lot of important issues were discussed today, like pertaining to OCI, pertaining to time limits. A lot of these common questions which people can have, there can also be a section in the portal for that. So broadly, these are the few elements which you can have. And then separately, apart from that, you can come up with some sort of mechanism to collate this information, like maybe something to like a Google Forms or something.
Correct. Of course. So those who are techies among us, if you could lead this initiative, we'll be highly grateful. And it would help to take things forward. It should not be too complex, not too difficult to upload. The simpler, the better. See, because even if we have just a kind of summary saying that all the information need not be shared there, and it will just become voluminous and it will become more of a maze. So if we know that these are the activists who are working on this issue, or that this concern is of relevance to some people, then maybe communities of interest could be formed that side. No, I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, I think you're making sense, because so what we can do is in this database, whatever we're having, we can request of people that when submitting information to the database, like on what you have filed in RTI, just put in one line, what is the subject matter, what you've asked for. So then broadly that gives a picture of what is it I've asked for. Let's say, for example, I've asked for COVID preparedness of hospitals in South Goa. So that becomes my subject of the RTI. Thereafter, if someone wants to know more particulars about what I've asked for, then they can get in touch with me and then you can move on further from there.
Yeah, of course. That makes a lot of sense. It should just be simple enough to update so that it doesn't become too centralized. The more decentralized it is, the better chance of it surviving. Otherwise, updating these things becomes a full-time job, and no one has that kind of time and energy to.
The simplest platform would be something like a wiki, wherein since most of these things are related to issues, so a wiki kind of platform, if we put it up on host it, then it's easier to manage I feel, because and we can have a Google Drive or something of that sort, or even people's personal Google Drive can be used to keep the documents where the link is put on the wiki. So like this example of COVID, you can have a topic there, and the discussions can be put in chapters as depending on the information that we collect and want to share. And then the links
Correct.
can be off our Google Drive so that anyone who wants it can just click it and have access to the document instead of centralizing all the documents.
Correct. That wiki makes a lot of sense. Some earlier there used to be Wikidot and all, which gave free space, but I think they folded up. I don't know where, but
May
a
I come in
Facebook
here,
group.
Fred?
Sorry.
May I come in here, Fred?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. You see, the idea of having RTI portals is fantastic. I don't want to discourage you, but I want to talk to you about my experience of wanting to do this at the national level, starting with Delhi. We had long discussions with a very reputable organization in the year 2009 or 2010. And then again, after 2 or 3 years, once again with them, NASCOM showed a lot of interest in helping us. But you see, these things become very resource heavy. So if you can find easy ways of doing it, like the wiki page idea that has been suggested, if it's workable, please go ahead and do it. Or if you can think of using Facebook as a way of putting up these documents, everything need not be put on just one page. You can open multiple Facebook pages, something on health, something on education, something on environment, something on COVID. And then, you give responsibility to each of your active members to update those pages as and when people share information. That is also doable. But what I want to draw your attention to is something that the government should be doing. In 2010 and 11, we had a long process in the central government for developing guidelines for implementing Section 4. I wrote certain chapters of those guidelines specifically, and they were included without even a change of word. They were issued in 2 tranches. The first one was in April 2013, and the second one was in November 2013. Nothing much happened afterwards. In 2016, again, the same department under a different leadership constituted a committee to advise on how best to implement those guidelines. Those guidelines are also available in the public domain, but nothing much has happened. But the short point is this. In the guidelines that we put together in 2013, which has been sent to every single state, to the chief secretaries for implementation, hardly anybody has taken it seriously. What we've suggested is this, that all RTI applications and replies, including information provided, must be uploaded on the website of the public authority that responds to that RTI application eventually. Personal information can always be kept out. It can be redacted. It can be blanked out. But all the other information should be available. Its main purpose being that it should be available for people, anybody and everybody. The principle is this: disclosure to one, disclosure to all. Therefore, people then don't have to ask for the same information again and again. Now, there is one good example. I'm not sure if you've already seen it, but perhaps those of you who are journalists, Fred and others might have seen it. BBC in the UK is covered by their Freedom of Information Act. And if you go to their website and check their menu, you will see a link which leads you to what is called BBC FOI logs, BBC Freedom of Information logs. And there, when you click on it, you get a treasure trove of RTI applications that went to them and the responses that were sent to the requesters. The only thing that they remove, because they have a very strong personal data protection law and they are subject to the European Union's GDPR, Global Data Protection Regulations. So they remove the personal information like the name of the requester, address of the requester, name of the PIO who responded. Those things are removed, but everything else is published. So something like that can be worked out at governmental expense. What is required is the will to do it. Money is available for doing all of this. Even if taxpayers' money can't be used, there are n number of international donor agencies who are willing to support pilot projects. Start with one department, make the information available in this manner, and then scale it up. Only thing that is required is for people to work closely with government in a sustainable manner, in a perseverant manner, and get them to implement their obligations of putting all the RTI applications in the public domain along with the responses. This would be an ideal situation. Otherwise, what happens is this. There is a lot of enthusiasm in civil society to start with, but maintaining it over a period of time, ensuring that it continues, ensuring that resources are available, updating is done regularly is a Herculean task. We are just not equipped for it, even if we are an organization. So those are some of the pitfalls that I want to warn you about. But the idea is definitely very, very exciting, doable. If those databases are created, it will be of great help to anybody and everybody, including future generations.
Yeah, that's very interesting information. I was quite surprised that the departments are supposed to put them up. This was news to me. I wasn't aware of that. So that's fascinating. Uh, anyone wants to jump in? Feel free to. It's an open house. It's brainstorming, so there is no set agenda. Some new people have joined us. You all are most welcome to raise issues, questions, queries.
I have just a question regarding we can talk a lot of things. What I could say is that the people who are executing or giving the information has to be trained up on the Right to Information Act. And that should come from the government or whatever agencies are supposed is to train up the people. If the executing people or PI or whatever you call them, if they're not trained up, you will not get the right information. That is for sure. And most of in the Western countries, before people who are engaged in giving any jobs or that, first thing what they do is they train up the people. They really give them all required information, and then only the person who does the job, he gives all the required information. And why it is? Because he is well trained up. So what I would suggest is that the people who are giving, like if you go to the secretaries, you are not even respected, you are not even worth a pie. They think that they are the bosses. But this kind of attitude has to be changed, and this has to come from the government itself. The government has to train up these people once they join the public service, and this is what is lacking in Goa or all over India. That's what I could say.
No, that's right, Bruno. But the point is this: see, like the situation here is quite different, say from Sweden, where you had. I'm just saying Sweden because they've had right to information acts or whatever from the 1700s, and you have an active civil society there. You have a high level of literacy. You have a big, strong middle class who knows it has an enlightened self-interest and who knows where its future lies in that sense, and it knows the price of being lackadaisical with the fruits of growth and trickle away of corruption and all these issues. Whereas here we are just starting with a few years of precedence to it. Not only that, there is a strong resistance to share information. I find it can be either from the officials to a certain extent and from the political class also to another extent. Sometimes it's just that they're overworked, sometimes that they feel like, who are you? This attitude thing that you said, no, we are the rulers, like who are you all guys to ask? So that attitude is slowly changing. It's going to take a lot of time. It's not, at the most we can hope to speed it up a little bit. But what you're addressing is true, no doubt about it. But how do we bell the cat? That's an issue. So it's going to be a strong process. My only hope is that if more people do it, and if it becomes more of a done thing, and if we get more ideas, see, because these ideas are always welcome. Venkat and company have gotten, even Linus and all that, have gotten a lot of ideas from elsewhere, and we have a lot to learn from the experiences of other states, of other regions where things are happening and they're doing more effectively.
Fred, I just want to comment on this issue of panchayats. After you've spoken, I'll come in.
Carry on.
Yeah, you see, I have had some experience of working on proactive disclosure at the panchayat level in Gujarat. We were there 2002 onwards after the communal violence happened. And when the RTI Act became operational in 2005, we did a lot of trainings. We actually worked with Gram Panchayats there to put up information about what the panchayats do, their budgets, their meetings, their committees, the schemes that are implemented through the panchayats in the form of wall paintings. We also have a film about this, how we went about doing it. One is in Hindi, one is in English. We also have the templates for proactively disclosing information in offline and online modes in panchayats. And that is, some parts of that have been included in the November 2013 guidelines that DOPT issued, because they are very focused on panchayat level administration for a variety of things, and on 4 issues: NREGA, food security, education, and health. They focus on not just the village level administration, They also go up to the taluka or tehsil, then the district and state level in terms of proactive disclosure. Now, while doing that, what we found, because we read through the Gujarat Panchayat Raj Act as well, ordinarily, panchayat meetings have to happen at least 4 times a year in Gujarat. And I believe it is quite similar in many other states. I haven't read the Goan Panchayat Raj Act, so I can't confirm whether that is the case. And those 4 dates in a year are invariably on specific days like Gandhi Jayanti, Republic Day, Independence Day, or some such thing. Okay. So we were able to actually put up that information on the walls and say, according to the law, these are the dates on which regular meetings have to be held. Special meetings may be held according to procedure given in the act itself. This was the date of the last meeting that was held, and this is the date of the next meeting that is going to be held. So it was so surprising for people when we were actually doing the paintings there. They came and watched us. We've got photographs, we've got videos and everything from that period. And they were saying, Ki, Arey yaar, what is this? Is this our country? Ki, this panchayat is giving us information without us actually waiting for us to ask for it. So our whole purpose was this, that even because in Gujarat, the panchayats don't open every day. They open thrice a week or 4 times a week. So our whole objective was that people should get at least some information even when the panchayat doors are closed, because the secretary is not there to run the panchayat. So even budget information, how much funding came in, how much money was spent, and how much money remains as balance for a 3-year period was put up on, not in painted form, but that was on a blackboard and it was written up in chalk. We did something very similar with the police stations of Ahmedabad. We created a proactive disclosure document according to section 4.1b requirements, and we circulated it to the DC, to the Commissioner of Police office, who completely fell for it because they were in this mode of proactive disclosure, because the present Prime Minister was then the Chief Minister of Gujarat. He was into proactive disclosure mode of all information that was of little consequence, because section 4.1b is more about basic information. 4.1c and 4.1d are the consequential bits where accountability can be fixed. But nevertheless, they took up those section 4 templates for the police stations. They converted that into Gujarati, and it was circulated to 70 police stations in the Ahmedabad Police Commissionerate. So we've got those templates. If any of you are interested in coming together in Goa, use those templates, adapt it to Goa's requirement, because everything that works for Gujarat may not work for Goa. So you might like to look at the English versions of these templates and then develop something for your own state. Work with your Panchayati Raj department or the Rural Development Department, or work with a DM who might be interested. Deputy Commissioner, you have only 2 districts, I remember. So any of those people, or you talk to your local MLAs and say, with your intervention, can we in your constituency use these templates for the panchayats and for the police stations, and accordingly you develop it for Narega and other things, because the guidelines are already there. So it really will help in a big way to push for transparency, rather than simply talk about how nothing is working or how there are problems and then we are fed up with it. Because that is exactly what we did. We talked about these issues, but then we tried to find solutions. The Panchayati Raj templates were actually put together by sitting with the Gram Sabhas. We did not even talk to them about the RTI first. We asked them, what is the information that you really want from your panchayats, without actually having to ask for it. They, believe me, they came up with a list that actually matched clause by clause with section 4.1b. And then we showed them what is there in section 4.1b. We read out the Gujarati version and they were shocked. They said, is this a law applicable in our country? We had never heard of this. And that is how interest levels in the panchayat increase. The Sarpanch, thankfully, was a proactive fellow. So what we did was this. We spent from our project funds $3,000 on just buying paint and hiring the painter who painted up the information in the form of templates that we had created. After that, the State Information Commissioner, the Chief Information Commissioner, was so proactive. He came to inaugurate this pilot project after it was all done up. And then in every hearing, he would tell the DMs and the ADMs who came to the hearing, saying that go to this village, take a look at it and see how proactive disclosure is done. So 25 other Gram Panchayats in that district took up this task on their own. We didn't have to spend a single penny. They literally did it at their own cost. Then what happened? The neighboring district, the additional district magistrate, he went to the commission for a hearing. So the commissioner told him, go to this village and take a look at it. It was literally like pilgrimage, you go to Sabarmati Ashram. Instead of that, you would go to this village called, it's called Kalol, Gram Panchayat. So they went there in Panchmahal's district. He saw that he was so enthused. He was a very young guy. he went back and he issued directions to 250 panchayats saying this template is available, spend your money and get it done. And I have traveled in at least about 4 or 5 talukas in Gujarat, and I saw about 50 panchayats where they had all spent their money and they had put up information, not just copying what was done in the pilot project panchayat, but adapting the information by filling up the local stuff that was unique to those panchayats. It's doable. So what you need to do is get a plan of action together to advocate with your governments, with your departments, to use these templates, adapt them. You do the adaptation yourself and give it to them. They like spoon feeding. So find your ways of getting the government interested and start this business of proactive disclosure in your gram panchayats. It's one of the easiest things to do. Working with other departments is quite difficult, but we were very surprised when the police stations also agreed to take this up. So see if you can make use of it. I'm happy to share it with you, these templates. I'll stop here.
That's fascinating in the sense that we don't sometimes appreciate the power that a little information can have in changing the discourse, changing the dynamics, changing the transparency levels, and even the full approach towards how a panchayat is run, for that matter. We need some success stories just to shore up the enthusiasm while being aware of the pitfalls at all times, and we should not take anything for granted, but I think that's a good way to go by. We have 15 minutes left. If anyone wants to step in at this stage, please. Maybe a quick round on the problems of RTI in Goa that we face or we are aware of, just to document some of those. Maybe just bullet points. If anyone can give me a one-line bullet point. I think the biggest problem is just non-replying to RTIs. No, some departments will just not reply to them.
Hi, this is Joshua here. Sorry to come in late.
Come.
I just had one question. RTI is very powerful, that I've always said, and I found it very effective. But what do you do when when you've applied for some document and then they tell you back, they send you a reply saying we have searched and we have not located that document? Then, I mean, what is the process forward then? Because it appears like a closed case. Then they just say, no, this document is not with us, and that's it. So how do we know whether they're being truthful about it, it's genuinely not available, or it is just being made to disappear because you've asked for it?
Is it a query? Is it a question of how we being careful about how we frame the questions also? Venkat,
Yes.
No, because what I'm saying is that, we always try, as journalists, we're always trying to ask open-ended questions. It should not be a yes or no kind of answer. No. So, of course, as was pointed out by Crizel Dias, if you ask too broad a question, then they're going to say, sorry, we are not supposed to reply to these kind of issues. But it should not be too broad. It should not be too narrow either. Venkat, some suggestions on this specific issue of
Yeah. Now there is some very good case law on this. You see, files go missing, not because they've gone missing, but they don't want you to see it. So what you need to do in all such cases is, if they say, before I explain what needs to be done, files can go missing for 2 reasons. The first is a genuine reason. They don't go missing. They are actually legitimately destroyed as per what is called the record retention schedule. Not every file is required to be maintained eternally by a government agency. There are periods that are written down in their record retention schedule. Which file should be kept for 1 year? Which file should be kept for 1 year after the auditing is complete? Which one should be kept for 5 years? Which one for 8? Which one for 10? Which one for 25? And which one should never be destroyed? So ask for a copy of the record retention schedule applicable to the departments concerned, and you will know with clarity what is the lifespan of one file. If it's been legitimately destroyed, it means that there will be something called a records weeding register. So there an entry has to be made as to which record of what file number was destroyed on which date, under whose authority, and that weeding register is a permanent record. It can't be destroyed ever. So you will have a record of all the files that have been destroyed legitimately. The second reason why a file goes missing is because somebody misplaced it. Somebody doesn't want the public to see it. etc., etc. Now that is a hanky-panky thing that is going on. In such cases, if they tell you that the file is missing, you must the case is not closed. Sorry, no. You must immediately file an appeal and say that the public information officer has not indicated whether the file has been legitimately weeded out. Instead, he has simply said it is missing, and therefore this is a fit case for ordering an inquiry about missing file, which means it is missing government property. Government or department, being the custodian of that information, has a duty for its safekeeping. And if they don't do it, there is a set of procedures that must be activated. So let the appellate authority decide the matter. Ordinarily, what they should be doing is they should direct the information officer to trace that file, or direct the concerned section which holds the file to trace it. They will not find it. If they find it, they'll give it to you or whatever, but if they don't find it, file a second appeal. Commission has to direct that a committee be formed. It's not written in the law, but this is practice. It has come through series of decisions that have been laid down by various high courts, the Delhi High Court and Bombay High Court being the most prominent. So a committee has to be formed. The committee has to make the effort in the department to locate the files. Even then, if they can't locate the files, now it is very, very clearly written that in the Bombay High Court judgments and the Delhi High Court judgments, that the department concerned must cause a first information report to be filed with the police about the missing file, which means they have to start the investigation. In Bombay, what happened was this. Somewhere in Maharashtra, what happened was this. I think it was the Urban Development Department. It said files were missing. Commission directed that the FIR should be filed because they simply could not trace it. Even the committee could not find it. And what the department did was they said, we don't know who is responsible, and therefore we can't file the FIR. So the matter went to the Bombay High Court. The Bombay High Court said, utter nonsense, don't talk crap. I mean, they almost said it in those words. They said, you have to file an FIR even if you don't know who is responsible. Finding out who is responsible is the police's responsibility. Let them launch the investigation, and then they will find out in whose custody the file was last located, and then they will fix responsibility. So that is the law there. Delhi High Court said the same thing in another case. But they still could not find the file. It's a very interesting case. State government said, we have sent the file to central government. Central government said, we don't know where the file is located. So Delhi High Court said, this is completely wrong. File must be traced. And then what happened? They still could not find the file. So this RTI applicant went back to the court and said, under its jurisdiction, please issue directions to the department concerned, this is the tourism department, to locate the file and file an FIR. So Delhi High Court said that, look, this is a case of a missing file. There are procedures given in the CRPC, which you can use to activate the criminal investigation process. We will not use the extraordinary writ jurisdiction of the court because you already have an option in law. So you, as the RTI applicant who has been told that the file has gone missing, has the right to cause an FIR to be filed under section 154(1). If the local police station does not file it, you file a complaint with the district head of the district police under section 154(3). So thanks to that judgment today, if the department which says the file has gone missing does not file an FIR with the police, the RTI applicant now has the right, by citing the Delhi High Court judgment, to get an FIR filed about the missing file. Then let us see what happens.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you.
There is so much that we don't know, and we are just waiting to know. So.
I have another query come issue that I would like to share.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, so the next, I mean, not the next, but the future of information, future type of information is georeferenced information. It's basically based on a GIS system where all data and assets and whatever you want to call it, like, is georeferenced on satellite maps. And one such instance I've dealt with is, we have dealt with recently, the coastal zone management plan, where sand dunes, high tide line, etc., were mapped by an agency appointed by the government on those maps, on satellite maps, which were circulated as draft PDFs files for us to comment on. So we asked under RTI for those shape files, they're called. The data is, the format is a shape file. And what the department said is that due to security reasons, national security reasons, they cannot share the shape files. Now, this was in contrary to the DOIT circular of Goa, which was circulated to all departments, saying shape files should be made accessible to any department and any individual or group. Because that is the national policy on GIS system, where georeference maps have to be circulated for whatever research purpose or anything, that sort of thing. There's no purpose mentioned, but they have to be kept open for the public. So yeah, so now considering a lot of data is going to be in form of georeference, whether it is like say sewage lines, electricity lines, I mean all sort of survey, land survey, all these things are going to be georeference, which is going to make it easier for activists, environment activists, and any other to interpret maps. You don't need a surveyor to come on the ground and do surveys to see the boundaries of a plot, for example. But the certain departments are still hesitant to give this information under RTI. So that's something that we as a collective have to go ahead, because I mean, I have to demand that this information be made accessible. And second issue is, recently I had noticed a trend in the town planning, the PDAs, and even in the CZMA, Coastal Zone Management, GCZMA, is that whenever you ask for a construction on so and so survey number, because as citizens we don't have reference to anything else, maybe the name of a structure or name of a hotel or this, they say that, you know, we cannot find a file for this, kindly give us a reference number of the file. So now they are using ignorance to deny information. So if an illegal construction is coming up on a particular plot, what we used to do is ask for a survey, all the constructional survey number, and we used to get those files. But now they're saying, no, we don't, you know, using survey numbers, the files cannot be traced. Therefore, kindly give us the construction reference number or, you know, technical reference number so that the file can be given to you. Now, how do we tackle that issue? Is there any judgment or something that in this regard, where as citizens we should not be, I mean, where do we get the list of say a construction license number or that sort?
Yeah, very, very, very interesting and pertinent issues.
Okay, if I may respond to both of them, what I would suggest, Avinash, is this. First, attach a copy of the department's letter which says that those GIS, you know, the basic data must be shared with even individuals, and make a general application without reference to the RTI Act. Say you are willing to pay the fees, whatever is chargeable, and you would like copies of the information that you want. Wait for a month, send a reminder, then wait for another 15 days, and after that file an RTI saying that we had submitted a request for this information by attaching a copy of the department's letter. We've not been able to obtain it under the ordinary course of things. Therefore, we are constrained to seek this information under the RTI Act. And then when they say national security, escalate the matter to the commission and argue that
this has already gone to the commissioner. It already went to the State Information Commissioner. It was rejected at that level also. Rahul Basu, who's with Goa Foundation, has taken this.
You have to go to court.
Okay. That's
you
the
must
next
go
step.
to court. You have to go to court. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is this. Now, according to section 4.1b, I think it is clause 13 or 14, all licenses, authorizations, permits, and concessions that have been issued by any public authority, the details of that, the procedure for doing it, and the beneficiaries of those licenses, permits, and authorizations must be proactively disclosed. So technically speaking, this is information that has to be in the public domain already. They don't put it out. So when you ask for that information, you give a reference to this clause and say, this is information that should already be in the public domain. Since I've not been able to find this on your website, I am constrained to seek this information formally. That's point number one. Point number two, if they still tell you, no, we want the reference number, then you still escalate the matter to the appeal stage and say, how can I give you a reference number when you are not mentioning that reference number according to 4.1b? So, you know, it's a dead end. Now, what you have to do is this, sorry, you are quite right. First appeal process does not work. They are all supporting each other. And with the kind of third-rate appointments that happen in information commissions most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, even the commissioners are pretty useless. There are just a handful of commissioners at any given point of time around the country who are pro-RTI. Some of the time, not all of the time, there are problems. So you have to be prepared to escalate this matter to the Panaji bench of the Bombay High Court to get a proper ruling without actually taking the commission's decision lying down. Today, unfortunately, that is the preparation we have to make. Why? RTI today is nobody's baby except that of citizens. Government doesn't like it. Legislators don't like it. Judges don't like it at all because it covers them as well. Media, well, some of them have started using RTI. I wouldn't say it's as bad as it used to be in the initial years. There are many journalists who file RTIs, but again, the number is not adequate like in other countries where the most number of information seekers are journalists, not ordinary citizens, not NGOs. But anyway, we still have to reach that level in our country. So you have to be prepared because ultimately RTI is only the citizenry's baby. If we support it, if we nurture it, if we keep on asking information, if we don't give up, then it will survive. Otherwise, it is going to go just the same way as this beautiful act called Protection of Human Rights Act. You have third-rate fellows who are today at the helm of of human rights commissions at the central level and at the state level. The glory days under Justice Ranganath Mishra or Venkatachalaya or Justice Verma, they are all gone. Today, you have somebody like Arun Mishra. Can't help it. The only way that you can fight this out is by taking it to court. Keep fighting for it. Unfortunately, it's a matter of resources, but I'm sure that Goa might have some pro bono lawyers, some young lawyers. It's best to link up with them and take these matters to court. So you really need to have something like a war strategy. It's not easy anymore to get information, even in the 16th year, because the philosophy of RTI has not seeped into governance. They're still stuck in the philosophy of official secrecy, and they will deny information to you. So you have to be prepared. This is my own life experience for the last 16 years. It's becoming more and more difficult even to get basic information. Even Food Security Act beneficiaries, one nation, one ration card scheme. Who are these fellows? Central government doesn't have the information. They say, go to the states. You are the ones who are releasing the grains. States are only identifying the beneficiaries. So under 4.1b, you have a duty to tell me whom have you selected as beneficiaries finally for issuing those ration cards and for giving free grains, because that money is coming out of your central kitty. These are all battles which are now in court. So we have to be prepared for this. There is no other way out, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but that is what India is today. We only have Jumlebazi here.
Interesting.
But the idea is good.
Carry on. Avinash, carry on.
The idea which he said, he explained on how to go about it. I'll definitely use it next time I file the RTI.
Thank you. That's a very interesting and strong point that that Venkat has made. Of course, he's put in years into it, so he feels a pinch more than all of us. But nonetheless, we need to also remain optimistic to a certain extent, realistic, optimistic, hopeful, ever hopeful. You never know when things will come along, because when it came in 97, it came as a complete shock to us. Till today, we never understood how and why the state government at that time, headed by Mr. Pratap Singh Rane, actually brought it about. So sometimes accidents happen, sometimes good accidents happen. We only can hope for the best and hope that citizens take some action. Maybe we have a lot to learn. Maybe when we share with others, we get empowered. A group like this, I'm sorry about what happened in the morning when I was fast asleep as usual. But unlike Venkat, I'm not a big Democrat when it comes to running groups. Otherwise, I believe in it. So that we. So if anyone posts off topic, they will be ejected wherever. But and of course, if they apologize and keep to the rules, they are welcome back. That's
absolutely.
But if there are no more questions, maybe we could wind up here. If there's any more issues, points you want to raise, feel free to. But I think Venkat.
Excuse me.
Please.
Sorry. Yeah, this is Joshua again. So I just want to say this is a really good system, and I mean a good step forward in the right direction. And thank you so much, Venkat and others who have contributed so much. I think one learning from this, in which I use everywhere ever since I started using RTI, is I just keep telling everybody I meet, anything they need to find out, just tell them, go use an RTI. And, slowly that is the way I think that we can just spread the word. And the more people that are using RTI, the more refined the system will get, I feel. Thank you.
Even this ability just to share the information online in a way which is so asynchronous and doesn't disturb us when we are doing other things and all that opens up new possibilities. Let's see where we can take it. But as Venkat says, the RTI is the baby of the citizenry. No one is really bothered about it. It may get temporary allies for some points of time for their own purpose. In Goa, I think the government servants are major users of the RTI themselves.
Yeah.
When they have some scores to settle, which is okay, which is fine. It's not nothing illegit about that.
Yeah.
The media, some people have started using it in quite a significant way, and it's interesting to see their interest. And they are digging up stuff. They have to get it out of their mind that it doesn't fit in with our 24-hour deadline and all, which is not an issue at all. It's just a straw man, because you collect information on other points. You're not collecting information for tomorrow's story or collecting background information, which is very useful. And then if we can link up RTI with opposition MLA questions, that is another ball game altogether. In Goa, we had a very good run a long time back with some MLAs who were willing to ask questions, and what we couldn't get in through RTI, they were asking it for us, and it became much more difficult for the assembly to block these questions and this information from going out, and it sets it on the agenda at a much broader level, because it's public knowledge the next day like an RTI. Last words of wisdom. We don't want the meeting to drag also. It's been a interesting one and very useful insights. Venkat, you want to close with a roundup of?
It's too difficult to summarize everything that's been discussed. I think we'll all just carry it back in our memories. It's been a very interesting discussion. I'm glad that all of you participated, and I'm also glad that I thought of volunteering this platform. Please think of this platform as your own. We can have these kinds of meetings more frequently. This is just the beginning of a series of things. Perhaps we can have more structured meetings later on. We could even invite some of the former information commissioners, prominent activists, etc., where we not only listen to them, but we also identify clear action points individually and as a community. And hopefully more people can join later on, because this movement should really expand. I would like to thank Frederick for agreeing to this idea, Linus for supporting the idea, and for all of you participating in it. I'm a little disappointed today with Advocate Rui Ferreira. I was actually looking forward to listening to his experience of using RTI, because I've seen case law, that has his name in the cause title. So, but hopefully next time he'll be more forthcoming with his views. We would love to learn from his experience and get some wisdom from his own, efforts to make the government more transparent. But once again, I would like to wish you all the very best in your RTI endeavors. Please don't give up. Despite all my frustrations, I still continue to file RTIs every month. In fact, after COVID, I have increased the number of RTIs that I file per year. I never filed more than 35 to 40 in a year, but now the number is more than double. This year, I might reach 100 because we still have quite a bit of this month to go. The more we file RTIs, ultimately my message is this: RTI is like our muscles. The more you use it, the healthy it will be. The less you use it, it will atrophy. So therefore, please remember this: use RTI, encourage others to use RTI, and let's make our governments, our administration much more transparent than they actually want to be. I would like to stop here, and over to you, Fred.
Thanks a ton, Venkat. We are grateful to you because you're adding value, Venkat, because you're adding value to our presence, and of course, thanks a ton. Thanks for all the presence and information and all that. Avinash has put up his hand. Avinash, you raised your hand.
Sorry, no, I thought it was a clap thing. I just wanted to.
Okay.
But anyway, Venkat, it was an excellent session. I have learned tremendously.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward
We'll
to some
come back.
other references.
Yes.
Yeah, I know he'll come back. There's no doubt.
We will take your offer and we'll come back. We'll have this.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you, sir.
Thanks,
Venkat.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
You
Yeah.
just,
Wishes.
Venkat, you just need to stop the recording and
I will.
save it now.
Yes.
Bye.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Good night.
Good night.